We are live. It's Dr. J here in the house with Evan Brandt. Today, we're going to be talking about using binders to help detoxify. Exciting podcast because we are utilizing all the things that we are chatting about with our patients every week, and we're excited to share with everyone else some of our natural strategies. Evan, how we doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Excited to dive into this. This is something that you and I got into several years ago, and it's been really helpful for our practice because we've been able to take people that were not tolerating protocols, and then we were able to get them to tolerate the protocol. And so when you're coming in and working on something like gut infections, whether it's H. pylori, parasites, bacterial overgrowth, candida,
Yep.
sometimes if people have been sick for a really long time, they may not tolerate the protocol we're giving them. And that doesn't mean the protocol that we're giving them is incorrect or there's something wrong with it or there's an herb reaction or I don't know, like a supplement that's not working well for them. That's not usually the case. In fact, that's extremely rare. But what rather is happening is that the process of killing off these toxins, I kind of use the analogy of like a bad breakup. And when you're kicking out the girlfriend, she's taking off the pictures off the wall and she's breaking them. And there's a bunch of glass shards in the hallway as you kick her out. It's not a clean breakup. And so when you're killing off these bugs, they don't want to die. They don't want to leave. And so they may release toxins that make you feel bad in an effort to get you to stop killing them. Hence, that's where binders will come in and they're acting as the janitor and they're going to come sweep up the glass shards that the bugs left behind.
Interesting way of looking at it. I like it. Like the analogy that I typically give is imagine you got a trash barrel right in your home. Well, it may not be a big deal until you go buy a whole bunch of groceries. Now imagine you got a smaller trash barrel. Well, once you're throwing away the egg carton and all the other trash from everything else, it's going to overflow. And that overflowing is where you start dealing with die-off. And a lot of people that are more sick tend to have smaller trash baskets to begin with. And so essentially giving yourself a bigger trash basket or increasing the frequency that we take it out, right? Empty it out is going to help. So I think either analogy works. So in general, I think the first thing that I want to highlight off the bat is, well, I like to prepare patients to get to get killing done in a right way. So I'm always working on hormones and adrenals and diet and blood sugar and digestion first. I find that is the most important component to all this. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So before you go in and start having to do all this killing and use binders, first get yourself ready for it. And most people do not like that. They want to go in there and kill. But preparations can be really important.
Yeah, and it sounds really attractive, and people, they get really excited when they find pathogens on a test. So we're going to run a comprehensive stool panel. We're going to run an organic acids test, and we're going to be jumping on a call with someone to discuss the lab results. And then they're going to say, oh my God, I have to get this stuff out of me. I knew I had parasites. I knew I had this. I knew I had that. And then they're ready. But we kind of have to pace people. When we've done this 1,000+ times between the both of us. So we know that, hey, based on their constitution, how do you pick up on that as a practitioner? Well, it all goes into stress management. What's in their bucket of stress? Are they going through a divorce? Are they moving cross country? Are they a teacher? Are they working overtime? Are they a CEO? Are they not sleeping well? Are they doing too much alcohol? Those things are going to make us say, well, you know what? We probably can't go full strength with this person. Or if we do, we're going to need to come in and bring in the binders. And the binders are these tools that they can be used in isolation. And we often use those in isolation. However, the majority of the time, we're going to be using them as just part of a protocol, meaning maybe during the day, we're going to be killing bugs. And then maybe at night, we're going to be using binders. Or maybe first thing in the morning when they're fasted, and we know fasting increases the excretion of toxins, including mold and mycotoxins. Maybe we have someone do a binder first thing in the morning at 6 or 7 a.m. when they wake up, and they don't eat until 8 or 9 when they take their killing herb, something like that. So there's a lot of ways to work these into the protocol, and it kind of depends on the person. It depends on the constitution. It depends on whether it's a kid or an adult. But these are amazing tools, and we'll break it down here in a minute.
Yep, I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So one of the first things we can do to help with die-off is decrease inflammation. We know agglutination happens or cells become really sticky when there's a strong inflammatory environment. So like imagine walking in your kitchen and like the floor is really sticky. It's like, oh, you're like creeping around, that icky feeling on your feet. That's kind of what happens when you're inflamed and you start doing detoxification. Your body is just all inflamed. Things aren't moving, things are sticky. And we want to keep things loose and flowing and slippery. So the first thing kind of in preparation for all this is getting the inflammation down. So one of the things that I love doing for die-off support, we talked about it before. One, we've already worked on the diet, right? Inflammation's down, food allergens out, digestion's better. We're working on sleep, we're working on hydration. Getting your hydration up is super important, right? Every time you consume water, you're diluting the amount of toxins in your body, right? Significantly. And so solution to pollution is dilution, high quality filtered water, reverse osmosis, or some kind of really good filtered spring water. Maybe add some extra minerals in so you're getting some minerals too. Add in some ginger tea. Ginger is natural anti-inflammatory, and it's also a natural anticoagulant. So it prevents things from sticking. You could do ginger tea. Burdock tea is also really good. That's a good starting place. So then things are moving, your cells aren't clumping up and sticking together. And then from there, that's where it's a good place to maybe add in some binders. So a good first binder would be a really good activated charcoal, especially ones that are kind of more coconut shell based at bedtime, 2 hours after food and supplements. So it's kind of in your bloodstream. It's kind of filtering things out. It's not binding up to all your food and all the nutrients in your food unless you want to because you're eating some bad food. That's a good first starting point to kind of get you moving.
Yeah, let's break down charcoal just a little bit so people understand what it is. They hear it, but they're picturing maybe the charcoal, petroleum-based block that your dad used to put lighter fluid on and burn them down and put them in the grill, and then you cook some hot dogs as a kid or something.
Oh,
That's
yeah, yeah, totally.
that's not the charcoal we're talking about. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to heat these coconut shells. That's going to be the best. And basically they're decomposed coconut shells. So they're at a very, very, very high temperature. And then they're going to combine it with oxygen to, quote, activate the charcoal. And then what happens is if you were to look at it under a microscope, you've got millions and millions and millions of what they would call micropores on the surface of the charcoal. And it's when people say bind, it sounds like a magnet, but it's really not. It's called an adsorbent agent. And so you've got this
No,
picture of,
you had it right. So it's not like a sponge. It's more like a magnet.
yeah, right. So it's like you've got, but it's a weak magnet is my
Right.
point about the magnet is it's weak, meaning that you actually can create a herx if you do too much charcoal, for example. So I did it personally when I went really high dose, like 8-10 capsules several times a day of charcoal. I started to get just a little off, like I was detoxing too much. And so I found, yes, it is kind of a magnet, but it's a weak one, meaning that if you picture like the lava rock, that's probably the best example in a big form that people can visualize is those lava rocks. Maybe you had that was like old school landscaping. I know as a kid, we had lava rocks in the front of
Yep.
our house.
Yep.
And so the lava rock, you saw these tiny little holes in it. And that's kind of the charcoal, but at a bigger level. And so let's say it's mycotoxins or heavy metals or pesticide, whatever else is kind of in those little holes. But remember, you still have to move this microscopic lava rock with the toxins on through the intestinal tract. And if you have a leaky gut, some of those things can kind of fall off the lava rock and then go back into the bloodstream, which is why you can herx even from binders alone. And so this is a really important point I want people to know because more is not always better when it comes to binders. So sometimes you can only handle 1 cap of charcoal 3 times a day. Some people can handle more than that.
100%. So you're kind of highlighted a couple things. What's the mechanism? Well, there's going to be an adsorbent mechanism. Think adsorbent, more magnet. Absorbent, more like a sponge, right? Absorbent sponge, adsorbent, more magnet. Again, we want to take it after food and supplements so we don't bind up nutrition. I like starting it at bedtime, so it's working overnight because a lot of how we detoxify happens around 1 to 3 a.m. And so I like having it in the intestinal tract when the liver and gallbladder dump. That way it's there binding stuff up and we can excrete it better. Now, one of the big side effects of activated charcoal and binders is constipation. So I always tell my patients, make sure your bowel movements are regular before you go into killing and use any binders. Because if we're adding things that could slow down the motility more, well, that's a problem. Now, it'll at least help pull toxins in, but it's still going to be slowing down your body's ability to get toxins out of your intestinal tract. So that's not good. So if that's the case, we're going to be adding in things to help move our intestinal tract and make sure we're passing all of our bowel movement out in 24 hours or less, 18 to 24 hours. So we have that effective mechanism of elimination working. So first check is like hydration. Second check is making sure your bowel movements are working. And then if they're not, we're going to be adding things in to make sure our intestinal tract is moving appropriately before we add in binders. And if we have side effects of constipation with the binders, we're going to be adding more support to keep the bowels moving.
And it's honestly pretty easy. I mean, it's a very common kind of gut reaction. Oh my God, charcoal, constipation. But I'll be honest with you, it's rare that it's something that requires special attention, because a lot of times we're doing extra vitamin C because most people are low in that. Most people are deficient in magnesium, so we're doing extra of that already. A lot of times the herb formulas that you and I are using for gut infections, those may have some extra bowel moving support in those. And just by clearing out infections, you and I have talked about in the past how bacterial overgrowth can create certain gases that will slow the transit time down. Just by eradicating those infections, the bowels can return to normal. So yes, constipation can happen, but it's usually not a huge wrench in the gears, and we can overcome it pretty easily with some minor tweaks if needed.
Yeah, exactly. So it can go either way. Some people, when they get inflamed, they're pulling a whole bunch of water in to flush things out. If you're more prone to be constipated, you just have to be mindful of it. That's why when we're adding in binders, we're doing it like one capsule at a time. So there's no big jump. Where people get in the trouble is they just kind of come in there with a higher dose, or they jump too fast. And that's where the problem comes in. And again,
Yeah.
like Evan mentioned, some of the herbs that we give may have a really, good laxative effect, or really help the intestinal migrating motor complex work well. If not, I'll be using special things like magnesium and things like that to keep the intestinal tract moving. Ginger is a really good prokinetic, so we'll be adding that in and really just helping to support the natural migrating motor complex of the intestinal tract while adding some binders. Now, once we start adding some binders at nighttime, we may do it sometime midday as well. That way we kind of have coverage within a 12-hour time frame. So we have some coverage at night, some coverage during the day, but I always start at night first, partly because that's when we were dumping a lot of toxins at night.
Yeah, let me just address this concern real quick, and then we'll move on to my next favorite binder, which is chlorella. Uh, so just like, oh, charcoal, constipation, people go, oh, charcoal, mineral depletion. I've talked with a guy named Neil Nathan who wrote a great book called Toxic. I often recommend people buy that to look into binders. He has worked alongside a guy named Dr. Michael Gray, who's a toxicologist. I believe he's out of Arizona. He's a guy who's been working on treating mold for decades. This guy has been using, I've heard insane numbers, like 50 to 100 grams of charcoal per day. We're talking literally 80, 90, 100 capsules of charcoal a day for years. And there's never been an issue of mineral depletion ever, 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 ever. So his kind of argument after I probed him on that question was, well, what about mineral depletion? He goes, well, so what if you lose 1 or 2% of minerals? If you're getting 98% of your nutrition and minerals still, the pros outweigh the cons in the sense that you're removing toxins that are affecting hormones, the brain, the liver, the kidneys. So he's like, yeah, maybe you lose a couple percent, but it's never been something that's caused like a heart attack because you lost so much potassium or anything crazy like that.
Yeah, you're just going to be taking it away. You're going to be just taking it away from it. So that's going to mitigate most of it. If you're taking activated charcoal with your food all the time, yeah, maybe you have a problem, but you're going to be you're going to be getting a lot of minerals in your water and food throughout the day. And then you're going to start by taking it at night when you're not overly hydrating anyway, and at least 2 hours after you've eaten. So it's not that big of a deal. And so, yeah, as long as you time it up right, I just think that's a moot point for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's go into chlorella, because I really love chlorella and I didn't know too much about it besides that you'd see like little chlorella tablets. It always comes in these little green, looks like a little Pez or something, and they're kind of hard to chew, but they're a little awkward to swallow. And then luckily I found a couple companies that make micronized liquid chlorella, and that's what I often use. Chlorella is an algae, but it works amazing as a broad spectrum. So a lot of people kind of market it as a heavy metal detox because it has a really unique ability to bind on to heavy metals like mercury and lead and cadmium and arsenic and aluminum, things that every modern human has, whether it's from breathing in car exhaust to having amalgam fillings in their mouth. But it's awesome. And I could show you several case studies on pesticides, herbicides, and mold toxins, and chlorella being used to pull those out. We've got, in fact, before and after results of seeing even little kids, 2, 3, 4-year-olds that I've worked with, where they had major, major, major pesticides. These were kids that were diagnosed autistic or on the spectrum. We give them as high dose as we can go of chlorella. We retest after 3 to 6 months, and guess what? The pesticide herbicides are gone. And oh my God, I mean, sometimes it just almost makes you cry because it's like, wow, how is something like this so beneficial, but you're not hearing about this on the nightly news?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing we can do to detoxify, I always tell patients, is stop adding toxins in. So first, stop adding toxins in. So look at your pesticides, right? Look at the food that you're eating. Make sure it's organic, no GMOs. Make no added hormones. Don't consume foods in plastics. If you use plastic, try to keep it in the fridge, out of the sunlight, out of heat, out of the microwave. Excellent clean water, filtered water, clean water. If it's RO, no big deal. Add some minerals back in there. I see a lot of people complaining about RO water. Hey, I'd rather have my water cleaner and then add minerals back in than have water that's more toxic, because you can't add things into the water that make it less toxic. It's either got to be filtered from toxins, and then you can add minerals back in on the flip side, and that's totally okay. And then from there, that's going to kind of give you the first foundation, because your food's good, your water's good, and then your hygiene products. Make sure deodorants and skincare and soaps were free of toxins there. And that way, when we add in binders, there's going to be just less things that have to be binded, so our body can work on binding up more things that are released from our tissues that are more stored toxins versus toxins that are coming in every day from our environment.
That's a great point. I even forgot to mention that, which is duh. Why did people have to get into the situation where they need binders in the first place? Well, it's they've been exposed to toxins. Now, some people, they weren't exposed to toxins on purpose. It was just they ate organic, but then they, stayed a month in a moldy Airbnb or something and they got exposed that way. So it's not always your fault, but you're right. You got to empower people and say, hey, look, you can make a choice. You can either eat organic and not get exposed, or you can eat conventional, but now you've got to do the cleanup work. And it's much better to stop it before it gets in than having to remove it once it's already in.
100%. Now, outside of that, we can do things to help our livers function better. We can work on phase 1 detoxification support, which will take a lot of these fat soluble toxins and convert them into water soluble. Now these toxins are mobile. So the activated charcoal really works great when toxins are now mobilized. If they're not mobilized, these binders aren't going to really work well, because everything's going to be in the tissue, kind of stored up, so to speak. So it's going to be hard to really grab it. So getting phase 1 detoxification support dialed in, B vitamins, antioxidants, these are going to be key nutrients, maybe liver tonifying herbs like milk thistle or dandelion or artichoke root. I have a supplement called Liver Supreme or Antioxidant Supreme, are both my phase 1 detoxification support. That gets things mobilized. Now, if they're mobilized, now we can come in there with binders and we can soak it up a little bit.
Yeah. Phase 2 is important too. Now, a little involved, I would
Exactly.
suppose, with the binder conversation, because if phase 2 is not working, phase 1 can be upregulated, but if phase 2 is not working, it's like you've got a fire hose going into a garden hose, and the backup can happen there. And I'll tell you personally and clinically, when I start to use nutrients to fuel phase 2, like some of the amino acids, I've taken it too far, like with everything, because I'm a guinea pig, but I've noticed massive, massive improvements just by helping out phase 2. And then if I ramp up phase 2 too much, I'll throw in binders, and then the binders will kind of help mitigate the
Mm-hmm.
hercs from upregulating phase 2. So it can be a little bit of a seesaw sometimes.
Exactly.
All
No,
right. What
totally.
else? What else should we
So
hit on? We should hit on the clays a little bit as well. You and I love clays. They're awesome. You've got zeolite, you've got bentonite clays. Those are kind of your top big ones. You've got like green clays and such. Clays are awesome. I find that they are really good at heavy metals and molds, and we'll often use it in a blend. So we'll use a little bit of clay, a little bit of charcoal, a little bit of chlorella all at once. And they're well tolerated. I haven't seen that many people herx from clay. So I don't have any, evidence beyond clinical with this, but I would say that you seem to have less herxing with clays than you do like chlorella or charcoal. I find you can go too much with the others.
Exactly. Yeah. So just to highlight a couple of things here regarding the sulfur, NAC, glutathione. Glutathione is a tripeptide anyway. So that's made from glutamine, glycine, cysteine, right? Taurine, MSM, alpha lipoic acid. Just getting a lot of our sulfur nutrients on board is going to be huge. That's going to help provide a lot of the building blocks for phase two. And that way we're going to be able to, you know, N-acetylation, glutathione conjugation, methylation, right? These are going to involve a lot of our phase two nutrients, and some of the phase one, like methylation, will involve like B12 and folate, right? So we want to make sure all those things are working if we need. Now, some people, we're not going to be pushing detoxification directly. We're going to just be, it's going to be there more to help pick up the dead debris from things that are being killed in the gut. But if the activated charcoal is still not enough, we may have to push more of those phase one and phase two just to make sure those toxins are releasing. And then the binders will be there to catch things a little bit as well. So a little bit of a push catch if necessary. If not, we'll just be doing more of a catch, and the push will be more from the killing side. So everyone's a little bit different. And I tend to, a lot of times this isn't a problem when you have the foundation built in first.
Yeah, the funny thing is going into this podcast, I thought, oh wow, this will be, pretty easy to explain. But the more we dive into it, the more this thing gets a little tricky and so case specific, because some people, they don't tolerate upregulating phase two that much. And other people, they have trouble with the binders. So we try to make this stuff as simple as we can, but keep in mind, people, this podcast is not designed to replace one-on-one functional medicine care. So if you really want to get to the bottom of these issues, you need help. You need us to help guide you through this, because I don't want you going and just popping a bunch of charcoal and you feel bad, you don't know why, and then you're confused about what you're going to do next.
100%. So let's talk about some binders. So activated charcoal, you mentioned the heating like that, which is going to really have a big binding effect. It's also going to help with mold as well. We have things like bamboo binders are excellent as well. We have things like citrus pectin, which are shown to be very helpful for lead. We have zeolite binders, which are very helpful for mold. I think activated charcoal is also very helpful for mold. We have things like beetroot powder, which has some natural binding effects for mold as well. Obviously, we have the medication, cholestyramine, which is a really good mold binder. There's some side effects, though, which can lower your sex hormones. Fulvic minerals, which have some mold and some binding effects too. Any comments on the different kinds of binders, Evan? Oh, chlorella, more on the metal side, more for mercury, though, more in the intestinal tract. Anything else?
Yeah, the cholestyramine is strong stuff. I used it,
Mm-hmm.
and man, I tell you, it works, but I do believe that it affected my gut negatively. I do believe that. Now,
Right.
I don't know if that's a direct influence, or was it a byproduct of dragging mycotoxins out of the system? I'm not too sure, but I would try to tell people, don't use the prescription binder unless you absolutely have to and you're just so miserable you can't get yourself out of the rabbit hole with it. Because for
It's not
me,
necessary for most.
yeah, for me, I really struggled, and I was doing the natural binders for months, and I needed a little extra help. So I did it short term, but I would try to stray most people away. The natural binders can be really good if you have enough patience and time to resolve the issues.
And for you, it's more of a mold thing. So we're kind of talking for binders for most people is more on the killing side, right? So for that, you had no problems with it, right? It was more on the mold side, correct?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
then you find you for on the mold binding side, you found that it was just better for you when you had what more glutathione and more sulfur support in along with the binders. Was that true?
Yeah, the glutathione definitely helped as long as I didn't do too much. And then also helping the glucuronidation pathway. That's also part of this whole conversation. And so calcium D-glucarate did great things for me as
Yes,
well.
calcium to glucarate's good, and that's a estrogen binder as well as a mold binder.
Yeah. Yeah, it really helps with what's called zearalenone, which is something we test
Yeah,
for on the
zearalenone.
urine. So, like we've talked about today, you can have a kind of a broad spectrum approach, but we really try to dial it in if we can. If we see specific mycotoxins, we'll try to get a little more specific.
100%. So I think that's really important. Anything else you wanted to highlight on that?
I think that's it. I would just say the first step is really trying to get the data, right? Because, people hear the word detox and like, yep, I need some of that. And it's kind of trendy, which is, I guess, good, but also bad because people just jump into detox not knowing why or what they're doing or what they're after. So my recommendation, as always, our philosophy is test, don't guess. and figure out, what do you have that you're detoxing? Do you have a heavy metal burden? Let's find out. Do you have a mycotoxin burden? Do you have pesticides and chemicals? Do you have all that? Okay, great. Now let's make a plan to go after these things. So like I said, don't just run to Whole Foods, buy coconut charcoal and take it if you don't know why you need it. I prefer people have a
Exactly.
reason.
110%. I totally agree. So a couple things, right? So number one, people say detoxification, right? Well, number one, you're always detoxifying. The question is, are you detoxifying at 100%? Are there enough toxins and stressors in the environment that are impairing your detoxification, where certain toxins are accumulating in your body more than are being eliminated? So number one, you're always detoxifying. Number two, it's more optimizing your detoxification systems. Also, number three, people that talk about cellular detox, that's marketing garbage. Okay. Detoxification is happening at a cellular level. It's called their cytochrome P450 oxidase pathways. That's happening biochemically at a cellular level. Amino acids, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, these pathways are being upregulated all the time. That's happening at a cellular level. So when people talk about cellular detox, that's just marketing hooey. Anything you do to help detoxification, just drinking more water, guess what? You're enhancing cellular detoxification just by you decreasing inflammation. You having really good nutrition in your food, you're enhancing cellular detoxification. Okay, so don't get caught up with a lot of these marketing buzzwords.
Yeah, unfortunately, detox is probably the most, what would you say, maybe sleazy, snake oily type part of functional medicine.
Yeah, it is for sure. And I think a lot of the time it is because people come at it from that's the first step. So they're taking people and they're just trying to upregulate these pathways right out of the gates. And if people have gut issues and they've been nutritionally deficient for a while and they have a lot of toxins that they're consuming food wise or in their life, yeah, they can really feel crappy and sick. So it's probably the last thing I do out of the gates, again, specifically, right? We're always detoxifying. So if I see a patient and I don't hit detoxification specifically with those nutrients, but I get them drinking better, cleaner water and get them going organic and get them pooping every day, I am enhancing their detoxification like tenfold, just doing that alone.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's just funny. I guess it gets a little cheesy because that's one of the few things that your average person who knows nothing about functional medicine knows about is the word detox. They probably heard it before their friend drinking detox tea or something silly like that.
Right. And then you have like the master cleanse detox, right? Which is, hey, that's cool. You're giving your digestive system a break and you're not necessarily detoxifying when you do that. I mean, you're not enhancing nutrition, you're enhancing fasting and autophagy and that can help with stem cells and that can help detoxify a little bit because you're fasting. So detoxification is a little bit higher there, but you're not specifically pushing those pathways. Most of those benefits happen because you're not consuming a whole bunch of food allergens. People feel better doing a master cleanse. It's typically because their diet usually isn't that great. So when they go on a master cleanse, they're avoiding a lot of those foods that are inflaming them all the time. The more healthy your food is when you go to a cleanse, you're kind of like, oh, well, it isn't that big of a deal because your food's already really of high quality.
Yep. Yeah. Silica's on the list too. There are small nutrients. I mean, there's boron, there's trace minerals. Some could argue
Molybdenum.
may be helpful. Yeah, molybdenum can be helpful. So I think we hit on a lot of the big ones, though. A lot of the big tools. You mentioned the pectin. I've done pectin. I'll be honest, I haven't noticed much from it. I do use it in combination with some other binders, but I've never done just like a pectin trial by itself and noticed any significant difference. Meaning, I haven't taken it and my head's clear. Like with charcoal, if I'm kind of fuzzy, I'll take a little charcoal and then boom, I'll notice the clarity. I don't know if it's pectin's different. Maybe it's not binding on to the type of toxin that's causing the head
It's
drunkenness
better
in the
for
first
lead.
place.
It's better for lead, I think, and
Okay.
mercury. Yeah,
Okay.
more for the heavy metals, but it's still helpful.
Yeah.
If you're going to be detoxifying, it's not going to hurt having that in there. It just wouldn't be the only thing you'd have in there.
Right. Right. Yeah. And maybe heavy metals, they don't have as much of a quick turnaround time on your symptoms, whereas mold does. Like I know if I've taken a mold hit, it's like, whoa, it's a pretty quick symptom reaction. Whereas, hey, I breathed in a little car exhaust. I'm probably not going to feel anything right away from that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, totally. So anything else you want to add, Evan? I think we really went to town on all this stuff. I mean, I think the key thing I want to highlight for everyone listening if you're having a lot of issues or hormone issues or detoxification issues, do the foundations out of the gates. But if you're still struggling, you want to reach out to someone like myself and Evan so we can help you all out. We're available worldwide, and Evan's at evanbrand.com. I'm at justinhealth.com. You can click on our schedule buttons and we can support you and help you during the process if you need that expert help. We've helped thousands of patients together. So we have a lot of experience, and a lot of people have other issues going on, like gut infections, like hormone imbalances, like inflammation issues, like other thyroid or autoimmune issues that are part of the issue. And just supporting detoxification by itself won't be the fix for that. It's part of a bigger, broader plan. So if you're
Yeah.
on the fence, feel free to reach out, guys.
Yeah, good point. And some of our mentors had said you really have to kind of market to people for what they think they need, but give them what they truly need. So a woman may say, "Oh, I need detox." Okay, so we'll be like, "Okay, yeah, we can help with that." But hey, guess what? Detox is not your number one priority based on these labs. We really need to do this. And as a side effect of working you through this, yep, we'll detox you as well. So don't always assume in your head you've got it all figured out, because there may be a different set of priorities or a different order of operations.
Yeah, it's always interesting when patients come in and they kind of have an idea of what they want. But then the question is, I'm going to try to give you what you need.
Yeah.
And I'll try to connect the dots, because if your goal is to get better and address these issues, then we're totally in alignment. You just you may think this is what you have to do to get there. But as long as you're open to guidance, then hey, we can adjust that for sure.
Yeah, it's always a fun process. So Justin mentioned the links. I'll mention them one more time. Dr. J at justinhealth.com, available online. And me, evanbrand.com. And that's it. So we'll be back next week. Take great care. If you have questions, concerns, comments, write us a review and tell us what kind of topics do you want us to cover. We're happy to dive into all of it. We live, we eat, we breathe this stuff every day, all day. I mean, this is our life. So we're very passionate, and we would love to hear what you want to hear about.
Absolutely. And we'll put a link down below under references for products that we specifically use and formulate to help support some of the pathways and the objectives that we chatted about in today's podcast. So if you want to support the show, you can also purchase those products that which we believe and personally use for ourselves, patients, and family. Awesome. Everyone, you guys have a phenomenal day. It was great checking in with y'all.
Take care now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.